Persuasion is everywhere, in our marketplaces, in the way we parent our children, in how we negotiate, in evangelicalism, politics, and in our day-to-day lives. Persuasion is described as this: the process by which a message induces change in beliefs, attitudes, or behaviors. There are elements of persuasion that social psychologists have researched, including the following: the communicator, the message, the delivery, the audience, foot in the door phenomenon, the Lombard technique, and gradually escalating commitments. We will take a look at all of these factors of persuasion. The next time you want someone to do or think what you believe, keep these in mind. Also, don't let yourself be persuaded into something you do not believe or do not want. Now Brooke will tell you about the 4 elements of persuasion.
As stated in Exploring Social Psychology by David Myers, psychologists have found that there are 4 main elements of persuasion: the communicator, delivery, message, and the audience. Taking a closer look at the communicator, we see that the attractiveness and credibility play a huge role in their ability to persuade an audience. Many studies have been done about this topic to test the influence they have over the audience themselves. Shelley Chaikin's article, Communicator Physical Attractiveness and Persuasion, gives many examples of studies that are done that show that the likability and attractiveness of a male communicator has a significant increase in persuasion in both men and women recipients. This shows us that the attractiveness and likability of a speaker make a huge difference in their ability to persuade an audience. Moving on to what is being said by the communicator. Here, we look at the goal of the presenter themselves. What point are they trying to make, and how are they going to make it? They have to consider the audience and how to manipulate the information to fit their needs. This can be things such as making it a local topic, having an extreme point of view, or one that is just slightly different of the audience they're presenting to. Next, the delivery. According to Exploring Social Psychology, there are 3 main ways to deliver the message: research versus emotion, the effects of good feeling, and the effects of arousal of fear. Each of these can manipulate the feelings and thoughts of the audience and persuade them more. Looking under research versus emotion, this is when the speaker chooses statistics or emotional information to give to the audience, which can be highly effective. Next, the effects of good feeling is when the speaker associates things with humor or even feeding a meal to the audience to let them associate things with good feelings. Lastly, the arousal of fear. This is when the speaker relies on the negative emotions of the audience in either small or large amounts. This can be really effective, but can also decrease persuasion if there is too much or not enough fear used. The last element of persuasion we will be looking at today is the audience. This is who will be listening to the information and what they will think about it. There are 3 things that need to be taken into consideration with the audience. If the audience is forewarned about the information they are going to be given, they are more likely to create counter-arguments against it prior to even hearing the information that they are going to be presented with. Next, we must consider distraction. This neutralizes the counter-arguments, however, can draw away from the message as a whole. Lastly, is if the audience is uninvolved, they use peripheral cues. So the presenter must be aware of the audience's need for cognition or lack thereof. Now, Matt will show you some methods of how to increase persuasion.
One way in which you can increase your effectiveness in persuasion is using the foot in the door phenomenon, which is defined in Exploring Social Psychology as using a small initial commitment in order to achieve a greater commitment later on. Studying this could be difficult, however, because each person has a specific initial request they may or may not be willing to abide by. But according to an article by William De Jong, if you have these 3 things, you can study it effectively. First off, you need a control group. One that includes people who are not asked the initial request. Second is, your data must include everybody, even if they said no to the initial request. And last is, you need high compliance with the initial request. Statistical significance has been found when upwards of 67% of people have complied with the initial request. On a similar note, we have graduating, escalating commitments, which is where you take the same idea of an initial request, but instead of doing one step, you do multiple steps over time in order to achieve a greater agreement or a greater success in the long run. And research has found that even if you prime a little bit before the initial request, it will seriously increase the success of gradually escalating commitments. Last up, we have the lowball technique, which is where if you offer somebody something at a much lower cost or a much lower ideology, you can then use that to then kind of meet more in the middle, and it will increase your effectiveness in the long run. In an article titled "The Influence of Lowballing on Buyers' Compliance," they found an increase in agreement of purchasing one item if they were lowballed originally. In conclusion, if we combine these three ideologies and these three kind of methods, we will be able to increase our overall success in persuasion by allowing people to step up their agreement over time and more successfully agree with our point or our action in the long run. Now we have Haley, who will sum it all up for us today.
Overall, persuasion consists of 4 elements: the communicator, the message, the delivery, and the audience. When the communicator has both attractiveness and credibility, they have a better chance in persuading their audience. The messenger focuses on the goal that they are trying to get across to their audience and what they can do to achieve that. The delivery consists of 3 ways to deliver the message: reason versus emotion, the effect of good feeling, and the effect of arousal of fear. The delivery has the ability to increase or decrease the effectiveness of persuasion on the audience. The last of the elements of persuasion is the audience. This is when the presenter takes into consideration who will be listening, the age group, and what they will think of the information that is being communicated. There are 2 strategies that are commonly used in persuasion: the foot in the door technique and the lowballing technique. Research shows that the foot in the door technique is a little bit harder to study versus the lowballing technique. Ultimately, persuasion is an everyday aspect of our lives. Whether it is represented in commercials or in our grocery stores, it is present. The elements of persuasion are key to understanding persuasion and being able to recognize the goal of the persuader. The 2 techniques are excellent ways to capture the audience and persuade them to listen or buy into your message. One also has the ability to recognize persuasion when it is being used.